Good morning, students. Happy Monday. It's time today to move on to unit number 7. This, remember, had to do with data representations. And if you remember your vocab word for data, that just means information. So, I've been outside collecting a lot of leaves. In fact, let me get one more. Okay, I have been busy collecting all these leaves to get my data. So in my journal, I'm going to write the word data. And you might want to write, that just means information. Now I've decided to measure my leaves to the nearest 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to put in inches. Now I went around my house. I've got my paper that's still in the back of my Think It Up book. I found a ruler, but mine was kind of hard to read. So I'm going to use my yardstick since it has the inches marked on it. Now I'm going to cut off the stems. I'm not going to use the stems. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my tiniest leaf. And then I'm going to measure my largest leaf. And then I'm going to fill in the data. Because remember, with a dot plot, even if you have 0 leaves with a certain number, you still have to have a starting number and a stopping number. So let's take a look at my tiniest leaf. It is super, super tiny. All right, this leaf is about 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so we have that one. Let's do this one. This leaf is 1.5 inches. This leaf is about 1 3/4 inches. Now some of these may be the same, so I might have a dot, 2 dots at one number. This one's 1.5. Let's see, some of these are kind of medium-sized. Oh, this one's right at 2. This one's right at 2. Oh, this one is 2 1/4. This one is about 2. This one is 1 3/4 inches. This is a nice long one. It is 3 1/4 inches. Let's look at this one. Closest is going to be 2 1/2 inches. We've got another 2 3/4 inches. Now I've got a 3 1/4 inches. Then I've got, this one's kind of tricky. I'm going to say it's 3 3/4 inches. I've got 3 1/2 inches. And this is probably the longest one I've got. And it is 4 3/4 inches. So now I'm going to make my data chart, make my dot plot diagram, and I've given it the title, Leaf Collection in Inches. Now, you can go outside, you can find leaves, you can find sticks, you can find rocks. If you like to go outdoors like me, if you like to stay indoors, find something in your house. You could measure toys. You could measure Hot Wheel cars. You could measure Barbies. Whatever you like, you could use that as your collection today for your dot plot. Okay, so let's take a look at my journal. So we said Remember, a dot plot diagram is data along a number line, okay? So it looks like 3/4 inches is where it's going to start, and then I'm going to have to keep numbering until 4 3/4 inches. So I have 1 inch, 1 1/4 inches, 1 1/2 inches, 1 3/4 inches, 2 whole. Okay, after 2 whole, I'm going to go 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, 3 whole, 3 1/4, 3 1/2, 3 3/4, 4 whole. Whew, we're barely gonna make it. 4 1/4, 4 1/2, and 4 3/4 inches. Okay, so we know it's all in inches, so you don't have to mark each one like I started to do. You don't have to do that. So remember, on a dot plot, all we're gonna do is place the dots above each of the numbers. So let's look at the data again, and we have 1 above 3/4 inches. Okay, and I can check that off. Make sure you do the check off method, especially if you collect a lot of something. Let's see, I have 1 at 1 1/2. I have 1 at 1 3/4 right here. I have another 1 1/2. I have 1 2 3, 2 whole. I have a 2 1/4. I have, another 1 3/4. I have a 2 1/2. I have a 2 3/4. I have 2 3 1/4. I have 3 1/2, 3 3/4, and then the really large oak leaf down there is 4 3/4. Now I'm gonna double check to make sure I got them all. Okay, so I'm looking at my data in my journal. I'm gonna look at my dot plot diagram, and then you know what I'm gonna ask you to do next. We are gonna make up questions that have to do with this information. So remember what we did in class. We may have said, how many leaves were more than 3 1/4 inches? Now you heard the key word I just said, more than 3 1/4 inches. So we wouldn't count the 3 1/4. More than, of course, means over it. So 1, 2, 3 leaves. Okay, let me throw out another question. As I'm throwing out these questions, if you want to hit pause and try to answer them, you can. All right, we'll start with another easy one. How many leaves are less than 2 inches long? Less than 2 inches long. Remember, if I said less than that number, we can't count it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves. Okay, let's try another one that you guys really liked. How many leaves were between 1 1/2 inches and 2 3/4 inches? Now remember the song we sang about McDonald's. All right, 1 1/2 inches between and 2 3/4 inches. That means we don't count those, but we count the ones that are between the two, okay? Remember, think about the hamburger, all right? What's between? So, looking at the next one, what if we said, how many more leaves were less than 2 inches than over 3 inches. So we would have to erase this, and we wouldn't count the 2 because I said less than 2, and how many more were over 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what did I get? I got 0. They are equal in number. So to end with, I know you're going to want to hear the song, so I'll sing it for you before we go, but you better be doing your dot plots today. 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Have a great Monday. See you tomorrow.